Hey everybody, the Montana guy. So in the last segment I was talking about the birth of Coulson, Montana. On this video I'm going to be talking about kind of what killed it as a town, so to speak. So if that's something you're interested in, please stay tuned.
I'm going to Montana to spend the winter.
I'm in Coulson Park, located in Billings, Montana. Right behind me you can see the cliffs. Back there a little ways is Pictograph Cave. This is Yellowstone Park, or not park, Yellowstone River right here. I-90 is right over here. Billings and the Rims is right over here. So now you kind of know where I'm at. As the Northern Pacific Railroad was laying tracks up the Yellowstone Valley, tracks approached in the winter of 1881-1882. Due to the railroad tracks coming up the Yellowstone, the townfolk of Coulson figured that the tracks would come through this stop for steamboats traveling the Yellowstone River. As I mentioned in the previous video, there was the individual Perry Mikado's. He was actually came from a steamboat, saw this location, thought it was perfect. So because of that, they thought Coulson was going to be a prime real estate. Due to the speculation and rumor, land prices in and around Coulson soared to unrealistic prices. According to the Billings Gazette newspaper article that was created on September 13th, 2014, Born by the River, Killed by the Railroad. That's the article name if you're interested in reading more about Coulson, which is a really good read, by the way. The Northern Pacific Railway offered to buy Alderson's 160 acres, but decided to look elsewhere when he asked for $30,000 for the land. So $30,000 for $160 acres. Nowadays that doesn't seem like much, but back in the day that was a lot of money. Very unrealistic for that location. So the town site company, the Minnesota and Montana Land and Improvement Company, which was a separate entity entirely from the railroad. So it was a different entity, but it was kind of created by them. Took advantage of the two adjacent railroad-owned townships just beyond Coulson, which is in downtown Billings. There's two adjacent lots, or what they call townships. The town site company was partly owned by some of the railroad investors, including Northern Pacific's president, Frederick Billings, which Frederick Billings was the individual that Billings was named after. And then it was also with Thomas Oakes and Herman Clark. Bought about 30,000 acres and platted a new town they called Billings on the Alkali Flats, about 2 miles from Coulson. So from where Coulson is over here all the way to downtown Billings was about 2 miles. That's where Billings started. So at the time of Coulson, the land of the far side of the river still was part of the Crow Reservation. So the Yellowstone River is going right here. So everything on that side in the 1800s was still part of the Crow Reservation. Other than the railroad choosing Billings as a town to go through, one of the final reasons why Coulson vanished was that most of Coulson's businesses were already moving to Billings. So once Billings started getting established, a lot of the Coulson folk decided, you know what, I'm just going to move over to Billings because they're having a railroad coming through there. It's a lot easier than a steamboat. So that was kind of the main reason why Coulson died, was because the railroad decided to go not through that town but around it kind of, and then establish the town of Billings 2 miles away. Also around April 1882, a strong wind blew into town, destroying at least 2/3 of Coulson and scattered remains across the prairie. The main reasons, of course, was the railroad, but also that 1882 windstorm blew 2/3 of that town away. So after that, they kind of gave up and said, you know what, we're just going to move to Billings. Even with the immediate demise of Coulson, McAdoo and Alderson did all they could to promote Coulson. As I mentioned in the previous video, a horse-drawn route called the Billings Street Railway between the two towns was created in May 1882, allowing Billings residents to travel to Coulson to collect their mail due to Billings not having one yet. Eventually, the post office in Coulson was discontinued and moved to Billings. Even after the post office left, riders from Billings could present their 25-cent round-trip ticket stubs for a free glass of beer at the recently opened Coulson Brewery, also known as the Ash and Boots Brewery. There are a couple different references to that, or stories, I guess. One story is that they got one free beer. Another one was that they got a couple of beers. So either way they got free beer. Needless to say, the brewery and the streetcar did a fine business for about 9 months. By 1883, the few remaining businesses in Coulson listed their addresses as East Billings, and most of the town shut down. By 1885, the streetcar had shut down, and a year later, McAdoo sold off his land and moved west to the Crazy Mountains. If you're not familiar with the Crazy Mountains, they're further west of here. Long story short, the rumor is that the reason why they got their name was because there's different stories per se of the same situation. Long story short, natives were rumored to kill the family of this lady. She became so crazy that the Indians called her Crazy Woman, hence the reason why they called it the Crazy Mountains, because she was in the crazies when it happened. That's the short story for it. There's a lot of different stories out there, but that's the one that I'm familiar with. On the 13-acre park of Coulson Park here, a portion of the site was used as a dump in the early 30s. During the Depression, needy families erected shacks on the riverbanks. They tore down most of the Coulson long abandoned buildings for firewood and also for shelter. Fred Pierce of Pierce Packing Plant salvaged the last remaining structure of lumber in 1933. All that is here now as evidence of this once, I guess, boomtown, I guess you can say, is that plaque that I showed you in the other video on that rock. It was set in the park in 1982 by the Yellowstone Historic Society. So, with that said, that's the second part of the segment of Coulson, Montana, the demise of it, and what kind of killed it. Again, there's only very few mentions of Coulson. There's a few locations that briefly talk about it, and so it kind of gives you an idea that there was something around here. But the main two pieces of evidence that it was here, of course, it being called Coulson Park, also Boot Hill, which was north of here, and then also that plaque. So unfortunately, there's not much information unless you start digging in it, or digging into history to try to find information regarding this town. But again, also another thing too is Coulson is kind of interesting because when I first started doing research on this town, I thought it was the actual park itself of where the town was, but in fact the Interstate 90 cuts it in half. Half of it was on this side in the park of where Coulson started, And then the other half was actually on the other side. I think it went all the way up towards the Metro, if I remember correctly, when I think it was Alderson was trying to create kind of like a picture of what it's going to look like. It was going further towards the heights up there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then if you actually go on the other side of the river, if you climb back here, you can actually see some spots where the ferry crossing was. There's some big iron circles that are punched into the rock face over there. Unfortunately, nowadays we can't, it's illegal to go back there, it's on private property, but one of the books that I was reading, it actually showed what it looked like, so I thought that was kind of cool. So again, thank you all for watching. My name is Joshua. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It's kind of short. Again, thanks, and you all stay safe out there and enjoy the woods. Take care.
There's a masterpiece just hanging outside my window, a picture-perfect postcard from my past. I've been stirring up a ghost inside my coffee cup,